Peace and light. I'm your host, Knowledge to Mind. I want to welcome everybody to the new and improved Mind Body Nexus. It is now the Mind Body Nexus Reading Club, and I'm now in chapter 4 of this book. We're going to start off with chapter 4. And if you want to catch up on the first 3 chapters, I suggest y'all go purchase the book, but I'm going to start off with where I'm at. The Cure for Everything by Michelle A. Williams. So I'm going to start off in chapter 4. Chapter 4 deals with W.E.B. Du Bois, the myth of racial inferiority and slave health deficient. The hay slept deficient. Pardon yourself, y'all. Trying to get the wordplay together, but the slave health deficient has never been made up, and today it is known as health disparities. Dr. W. Michael Bird. In June of 1896, W.E. Du Bois received a telegram that changed his life. It was from Charles C. Harrison, a retired sugar magnate and provost of the University of Pennsylvania, on behalf of a group of civil leaders and scholars, offering him a job to determine the present actual conditions of Black America living in Philadelphia's 7th Ward. They wanted to know why Black residents in Philadelphia weren't doing well economically and what could be done to improve their situation. Their invention was a lifeline for the Harvard-educated 28-year-old social scientist who had been languishing in a professional wilderness teaching classes at Wilberforce University, a small Black school in rural Ohio. Wilberforce. When he was summoned by the cadre of the high-profile progressives in Philadelphia. However, Du Bois knew he faced a daunting task because the answer to their questions was blindly obvious. It was the color line, which thwarted the city's Black residents at every conceivable turn. He will be battling gale force headwinds to combat the deeply ingrained stereotypes about Black Americans and their savage nature that have been used to perpetrate white supremacy for hundreds of years. And it still goes on today. You know what I'm saying? It's like if Europeans see me with this, they'll make me out as trouble. He's trouble because he don't have a Christian cross, but all a Christian cross really represents this day and age is slave of the mind. So when the white man see you wearing Christian cross with Jesus on it and stuff like that, he know he still got your mind. When you wear stuff like this, they realize you have broke away from the chains of your mind, not just physically, but of your mind, and they'll make you out as trouble. That's a part of white supremacy. So people won't look at me as a young Black scholar, philosopher. They look at me as a nigga that don't know anything, but that's a part of their white agenda. You know what I'm saying? Now, I bet you $1,000 the shit that I'm bringing on this channel won't get over 10 views. But let me be on here showing guns and money and talking about who I shot last night. I'll get a 2-3 million views and get famous for it. Because that's the shit they want us to talk about. Susan Wharton, a wealthy Quaker and prominent social activist with deep ties to the university, had done charitable work in the 7th Ward. In the fall of 1895, she conveyed a meeting in her family's town home not far from the center of the so-called Negro ghetto, gathering influential members of the city's Black community, prominent white leaders, and a representative from the University of Pennsylvania. They discussed conducting a full house-to-house investigation into what was causing all the troubles, but the motives were hardly altruistic. Wharton and other progressives viewed the rampant criminality and venality of the poverty-stricken community as a Black plague, a virus to be quarantined, according to David Levering Lewis in the Pulitzer Prize-winning biography W.E. Du Bois. Their real agenda was to use the cover of quasi-science to enact stern measures to contain these deplorable conditions and presumably presumably the people who lived in them, and prevent them from infecting polite society. But Du Bois had an entirely different agenda, one that only someone of his prodigious intellect and self-confidence would attempt. He wanted to turn around the racial paradigm and challenge centuries of thinking about the health of Black Americans. And the accepted wisdom of that era, which certainly has its echoes today, the illness, vulnerability to disease, and early deaths of Black Philadelphians were their own fault and a result of moral failings and inborn inferiority, not social forces over which they had little control. They absolved civic leaders of any responsibilities for the abysmal state of one of their cities' communities. And what better way to prove their case than to have Harvard's first Black PhD make it for them? Du Bois set out to prove them wrong. The groundbreaking research he did that year rescued him from obscurity and established his reputation as one of the nation's most eminent scholars. He is widely considered the founding father of social epidemiology. His seminal study became arguably the first in the world to miraculously document the effects of racism on health, and to lay the groundwork for our complementary understanding of how social inequalities, I can't pronounce that, y'all, right now, and iniquities, and not personal failings, are often largely responsible for community failings, male circumstances of poor health. Data made a difference in those days. It was convenient for even scientists and doctors to cling to unscientific ways of thinking, not just about race, but also on the matters of class, gender, ethnicity, and natural origin. They were steeped in racism and social Darwinism because of the lack of insight into the reality of poor circumstances. In the absence of data, it's easy to look at how poor people were living and blame them for their unhygienic conditions. Easy to conclude that somehow it's their own fault and the result of moral failings, or because they're genetically inferior. These attitudes persist to this day, reminiscence of the arguments made by J.D. Vance and Hillbilly LG about Appalachian poverty. And just a little slight reading for that part of W.E. Du Bois, but it speaks about how he did a research on what affected certain Blacks in certain neighborhoods and what affected certain ones, and did a research to understand that there was the environment that played a crucial role in developing most people in certain environments. So if you was born in a certain environment where you see a certain thing, like for instance, if you come from an environment where you only see people like role models, if you're a younger melanated man like myself, you only see your role models, older melanated men get arrested, get killed, or in gangs, sell drugs, it kind of clicks in your mind that's the path that you can take, because you don't know no other path because you wasn't introduced to it. You know what I'm saying? And we live in a society where most environments program people to operate a certain way. That's why it's very important to stress, if you've never been anywhere to travel, go different places, see different things and people and environments, so you will have a way of moving. You know what I'm saying? And with that, I'm just jumping in, giving y'all a little message, and I'm going to start off on part 2 later this evening. Peace.